Fuck people. Hopefully I did this right. I guess we'll find out when she gets in here. Let's see here. Okay, so tonight I'm trying to, oh my goodness, it turns out there's all these things you could do this whole time. Okay, I look a little crazy right now, y'all. Okay, I look a little crazy right now. I wonder if I should just take this off and make the lighting better. Hold up. I'm trying to nigga rig this thing, okay? Hold on, hold on. Yes. Okay. We're here. We're here. Okay, so tonight I'm super duper excited. I really hope. Okay, good. It does show that it's working. Perfect. Okay, so I did this thing where I hooked up my microphone and got all the like things and analytics and things working and whatever. So I was like, let me just see if this is actually working. But tonight I'm very excited for this episode of The Divine Afro. We cut off all these other distractions. And I have one of my favorite guests of all time, Miss Rachael Larson. Y'all will know her as podcast outline. Here we go. Rachie does it. Okay. And Rachie does do a lot of things. Really, she does. So tonight we're talking about how to read our astrology chart. Okay. This episode is called Who the Fuck Am I? Who the bleep am I should actually say. I'm trying to sing where I don't, swear as much or say as many profane words, but I'm a work in progress. Okay. So I'm super excited because tonight, when we go about reading our astrology charts, I really want this episode to be educational so that way you can go in and learn how to read your own chart, right? Now, people like Rachel have been studying for many, many years. And so obviously, this is just going to be like a quick little crash course, and maybe we might could come up with like a collaboration or something like that. But for like education and how to continue to advance your studies when it comes to your astrological trainings. Let me just move this bitch back. Oh my gosh. See, look at this bitch. Truly, I do tend to surprise myself sometimes. I really do. I do tend to surprise myself. Anyways, so this episode is called Who the Bleep Am I? And you should be able to figure out exactly who the bleep you are when it comes to reading your astrological natal chart, whatever you would like to call it. And so I have been waiting and waiting and patiently waiting for this episode to be able to come to pass. And here we are. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of the basics. Like, this is just assuming that y'all know what apps to use, and we'll go through that maybe. That is assuming you know your birth time and you've already been kind of studying yourself for a while. And so, now we can start to get into aspects where we are like, trying to get a little bit more detail. So getting more on our course based off of what is written in our stars. And so, damn, I should put that on a damn shirt, really is what I should do. Okay. But yes. And so I'm very excited for this episode because some shit has changed in my life since Rachel has been reading my chart, and we haven't even had a reading truly, like, because what I like to do is I like to go to Rachel, have some things read. She gives me directions so that way I'm able to go through and look at some of these other aspects of my life, and I can figure it out and really truly learn myself, as opposed to having someone else just telling me about myself, right? And so I want to be able to be taught, and I want to be able to learn more. And so I hope y'all will take away this from this episode what I hope I'm able to pull out. So With that being said, this is my little podcast studio in my kitchen. I would show you, but I'm on my computer right now on Zoom. So yeah. So first of all, Rachel has been studying astrology for over a decade. She has been able to help me grow in my spiritual journey um, in a way that I didn't think would be possible because astrology is really in detail, is really in depth. There's so many layers to it. And it was so overwhelming that I honestly didn't even know where to start. So I just didn't start. But then I ended up creating things like this little book over here. Okay, this book. I was actually just showing my new little mentee. Let me just move some of this stuff back. There we go. My little mentee this today in our meeting. And so I call it a little grimoire. So I created this little thing. Here we go. And so I went through every single planetary aspect and put the basic properties of that planetary aspect. And so when it comes to reading my chart, I can refer to this grimoire and then plug it into my life. She's also helped me figure out what apps to use. And so then I'm learning specifically more about what these specific planets have to do with my every single day life, what it is I'm here to experience, work life, my personal life, romance, and other healing areas that I'm here to heal any karma, anything like that, right? Now, there's different aspects and there's different transits and there's different periods where you should be releasing things or trying to draw things in according to your natal chart. And then you have like asteroids and other shooting stars or something. I think that's still considered an asteroid. But, anyways, um, or a comet. That's what I was thinking of. Like reading those, or if you have any retrogrades in your chart. I don't know if I said that. So there's so many different aspects of your life, and then you can figure out what it is that you should be focusing on in different periods in the cosmical changes as we experience life in this realm, right? So I'm super excited about this episode. We're just waiting for her to come in. So I'm going to pause it and get my shit together a little bit, and then we'll be right back with this good episode. What up? Hello, hello.
Got it. All right. Sorry, I had to install Zoom. I haven't used Zoom on my new computer yet.
Really? I haven't either. I had to use it today for the first time, and I was like, let me just get this shit set up.
Let me try it.
Right.
How we doing?
Oh, just, dandy, doing all the
Yeah.
things and stuff. Today was so fucking busy. Like,
Is it?
truly it was.
I
So, how are you?
I I had to think about that one for a second. I'm just wondering if I should move
Oh,
to
hi.
this area. I'm good, I think. I've been so fucking busy. It's just like
That's good, right?
yeah, it's just calamity. Just
Yeah.
chaos at all times, but it's good. I just moved.
Did you buy a house?
Laura bought one,
Oh, I love that.
and I'm not ready to be settled here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So it worked out quite nicely for me. So I'm just, bunking up in the basement suite.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Well, that's exciting. And also, moving is the worst.
It was the worst. It is still actively the worst. Like I moved like probably a month ago, and it's still like we're like my room is under construction. We had to like build a wall and shit and like
Build a wall.
yeah, it's just it's
Oh my
bad because it
God.
was just a giant basement with a back room, and I was like, I mean, I'll live here, but you have to build me like a proper room.
Right.
And,
Okay. I feel
yeah,
you. I
yeah.
feel you. So you're not quite ready to be settled here? I feel that. I feel
Well,
that. I
my
feel that.
boyfriend, I have a boyfriend now.
Did you have a boyfriend when you came and get your hair done?
I don't think so. Oh no, no.
Okay.
I don't think so. Did I come in after I went to Mexico?
I think it was before Mexico.
I mean, you know me as whatever.
I
No,
don't
but
know,
my
ma'am. You're just like in and out of everywhere. It's like Carmen San Diego.
I'm going to Seattle in 1 week to see him. So
Okay, it's
yeah,
a distance situation.
quite a bit of a distant situation.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, it
But
is.
anyway, just a lot going on, but whatever.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so how was the Kellerland segment? That I watched it. It was really good.
It was good. I felt good about it. I felt I didn't know exactly what they were going to ask me. They wanted to do like summer astrology was the um
The vibe.
preface I got. Yeah, like when they were like, "Do you want to come in and do some summer astrology?" And I was like, "Sure." And so I had kind of just like picked out a bunch of like happenings that were significant basically from now then until like the end of August. And so I kind of had what I wanted to talk about. And then when I got in there, she like, I didn't know exactly what they were going to ask. And she right away like started with this super in-depth question. So, which was fine, but I just ended up having to kind of like back like digress a little bit to try to like explain it in a way that was like legible for people that don't like sit with their nose in astrology books all day.
Right.
So it was good. I did feel it felt a little wordy, but I feel like I got like some good information out there, especially if like people watched the whole thing. I feel like I connected it well and like it hopefully was understandable. So
Oh, it was totally understandable. I feel like anyone I just assume that if anyone's like booking appointments with astrologers or watching anything about astrology, they have been doing it for so long that they know like if
yeah,
you
I mean
feel it's
it's just
wordy, they're probably following. Like that's just what I would assume.
I
But
don't
that's
know.
probably
I've
incorrect.
had to try to like rewire that assumption because
Mhm.
I sit here and talk about all this stuff all the time like to all my good friends, and if my good friends can't understand it then I have a problem. So I want to make sure that like I'm always communicating something that can be very complex from like a space of like let's start from the basics so that you can understand the building blocks as I'm like layering on all these super complex like happenings and these layers of energies. So I think even if you are like you know astrology or like you've been studying it, like you get into some of these like more nuanced terms and it's like okay well how does that play into anything, like I don't understand where that's even coming from. So
Mhm.
yes and no, I would say it's good to like try to set the table a little bit for some of that more like complex those complex things so that people can actually like integrate it into their personalities and like actually try to apply it instead of just like oh well it's kind of this like nebulous thing, like I can explain to you what it is but like for people to actually connect it to like how they can apply it in their life, I feel like
Right.
it's easier to kind of like set the table from a space of like okay, building blocks. And then like that's when we get way up here and now you can kind of like filter it down a little bit from
Yes.
what you already know. So that's how
Yes.
I personally try to do it, but it's hard like when you get asked questions, obviously you want to answer them. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay, well, that's a really good way to like open up this whole thing because that's
Yeah.
the goal. Like
Yes.
I've learned so much from you, and that's what I said when I first started this was like I would not have anyone else do this because I like
Uh,
how you do it just because you're not telling me about my shit. You're giving me guidance on where I should be looking and studying myself.
yes.
And
That's
then that's
key.
just like the basic building blocks. So like I sent you the outline, right?
Yes.
Okay, so obviously the questions are the same for your sun, moon, rising,
Mhm.
Mercury, Mars, and Venus. Those are like the main ones that I was like, okay, everyone goes to look at these ones now. How are they able to incorporate these things or study these things? And
Right.
how important is each of these aspects when it comes to your day-to-day life and what it is that you're here to experience?
Right. Um, well, I mean,
I know it's very like vague because it
it's
could go so deep.
well, it's just it's yeah, everything is nuanced, right? So I mean, I would start by saying, like you said, a lot of people that are into astrology know like what their sun, moon, rising is, and maybe like their Venus. And that is really like the building blocks or like the main focus of like somebody's personality, I would say, in a birth chart. um is, you know, your sun being the ego and kind of like what drives you, your moon being your emotional depth and like how you feel most nurtured. The rising sign can be kind of a lot about like appearance, and the way others view you, and kind of like this like filter that you like look at everything through a little bit. And then your Venus is how you love and how you feel love, and a lot about like material things too, like wealth and how you like can find enjoyment in life. So those are kind of like main ones that people go to. Venus is also about relationships, so obviously people naturally gravitate towards that.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also like those are just your main points, but then there's every other planet in the solar system as well. And they are all in signs as well when you're born and play into different aspects of your personality as well. So one or the other like planet isn't more important. I would say that some of them, the ones that are closer to Earth, being Venus, Mars, and Mercury, those ones can have, and the moon, and the sun, they all move a little bit quicker through the signs. And so their changes can be a little bit more noticeable because it's like, it's just more of like a swing, especially like the moon, because the moon only takes 2 days to move through a sign. So
Mm-hmm.
like it's more of a swing when like the moon's in Cancer and I want to eat and like stay home and like be snuggly wuggly, as opposed to like Sagittarius where I want to go out and like socialize and be with my friends and have a good time. And those that the moon moves quickly, so like it's a little bit more noticeable if you actually start to pay attention. um so I wouldn't say like there's planets that are more important than others. It depends on what method you're using because there's a lot of different schools of astrology. But you know, the faraway planets like Saturn and Pluto, um, they they're more karmic. Their effects are longer lasting. They can be very like polarizing and maybe a little bit harsh when they interact with the fast moving planets. So kind of what you have to keep in mind is that like, yes, you have a birth chart and your birth chart is going to signify like, this is your personality, this is the energy you have to work with for your whole life. um, and all the planets are where they are when you're born. But then, like, obviously, the planets keep moving, right? So
Mm-hmm.
every single day you're working with new energies, um, relative to the solar system, and then comparing that to what you already have to work with in your birth chart. So it's always all these interminglings and always like causing new dynamics. And that's why sometimes when you listen to like astrologers or like, you know, you're reading whatever horoscope, like that's why it's constantly changing. Like I had somebody tweet me one day that's like, you're always like warning us about something, like can't we just get a break? And I'm like, well, if you want to tell the planets to stop moving or the earth to stop spinning, I'm
Right. I'm just the messenger here.
so
Sorry.
yeah.
So
So
if someone's trying to like formulate, for example, like this younger generation, I've noticed really needs some type of guidance, and they're always looking externally when obviously they have the answers
mm,
within themselves, right? So it's like, okay, how do you get a generalized idea? Because there's houses and the different planets and archetypes rule over certain houses and planetary bodies. What are some of the aspects that you would tell someone to look at in their chart to figure out what it is they're looking for when it comes to work, specifically
yeah,
work, I would say, because I think that is gives people a sense of purpose, if you will.
yeah,
So
like
what would you say?
where's the starting line? So kind
Yeah.
of like we were saying, definitely the sun moon rising, um that's everyone's baseline. That's the first thing I look at. When I pull up a chart and I'm doing a reading, I want to know where's the sun, where's the moon, where's your rising sign. um and from there it can get a little bit more complicated. And this is where you start to have to kind of do a little bit of your own research, unless you enlist an astrologer. They can help you. But the next thing that I look at is the ruling planet of the entire chart. So when we talk about the rising sign or the ascendant sign. Um, every single every single sign is ruled by a planet. So I have a Cancer rising. So the moon rules Cancer. So when I see somebody with a Cancer rising, I'm going to look in their chart to find out what sign the moon is in, because that's going to give me a really good idea of like the tone of their life, and kind of what, like, it kind of gives me like a pulse on like their energy and kind of which planet really like influences them heavily. So when the moon's moving, like I like, for instance, anything going on with the moon, I'm heavily affected. Because that's just how my energy is. So I think, I mean, are you Capricorn rising now?
Bitch, yes.
What a crazy story that is.
Dude, I haven't even divulged that yet.
That's wild. So you guys, Ariel, I've been giving her readings for, I don't know, like a year and a
Years.
half, 2 years.
Yeah.
And we had the wrong birth sign for her. So we recently discovered that she has a different rising sign than we thought. But that being said, Capricorn, she's a Capricorn rising. So therefore, Saturn rules Capricorn. So I'm going to look at Saturn to tell me a lot about the tones of her life. From there, too, the other thing that's a big thing to focus on is whether you have a night chart or a day chart. When you look at a birth chart, maybe I've got here. Here's Oprah Winfrey's birth chart, for example. So this line right here is separating the top half,
Mm-hmm.
the day side, and this is the night side.
Okay.
So if your sun is on the top half of your chart, above this line, ascendant, descendant line, that means you have a day chart. If it's below, then you have a night chart. So that's important because different Venus and Saturn are going to be your most positive planet and your most negative planet if you have a night chart. And then if you have a day chart, it's going to be Jupiter and Mars. So you got to kind of like,
What classifies the day chart? Like, what's the time cutoff for day chart and night?
It's the horizon. So that's why you have to look at the chart, because depending on what time of year it is, the sun's going to set at a different time, right?
Right.
So if it's below that line of your ascendant, descendant, that's how you tell. So I can't, like, there's no specific time, because sometimes the sun sets at 8 o'clock. I think you have a night chart. I can pull yours up.
I'm pretty sure I have a night chart, but I don't know because this shit just looks very evenly balanced.
If you ask me, I'm perfect. So.
I mean, I'm not saying perfect now, but
no, we all have, everyone's charts has their strengths. That's the cool thing. Okay, so yeah, you have a night chart because your sun is in the 4th house on the bottom half. Okay. So that tells me that Saturn is going to be your most challenging planet, and Venus is going to be your most productive, or like your best planet, your luckiest planet. So that matters too. Like that's probably the third thing I look at. Okay. And that's going to tell me a lot about where else to look in the chart from there. When I'm now, that's kind of what I look at. That might be a little complex for like somebody that's going in on their own. So I would probably say, if that's a little bit boggling for you, the next step would be to figure out where all of your find a birth chart calculator on the internet. They're free. There's tons of them. Yep. And start looking at every single planet. So find every single, where's your Jupiter? Where's your Mars? Where's everything? And then you can usually go, if not in that exact website, you can pull up Google and write Jupiter in Aries and then read, and just read, or go buy an astrology book.
I was going to say, what astrology book do you have? Because I have a few of them, and that's how I read on myself.
I have many. This is the first one I ever bought, and I bring it around with me a lot just because, I mean, it's been used and abused. As you can see, it's highlighted. It's got, little notes. It's got like all sorts of things. But this is Linda Goodman's. No. Chris Brandt. complete book of astrology, the easy way to learn astrology. And I do think this was a good jumping off point. I would say that there is better books now that I've learned, and I've studied so many different types of astrology, which I can give you a list of books. Maybe you could put that in
In the
the
description,
yeah.
definitely. That'd be dope.
But yeah, grab an astrology book, use Google. Everyone that like really, if I talk to somebody about astrology and they really start getting interested, I tell them to download the Time Passages app. I'm a big
Yes.
fan of that app. It will tell you a ton about yourself for free, and then you can start adding other people and comparing charts. I think for like 99 cents. Like it's not, and it's
Yes,
very
no.
accurate. Yeah, it's really accurate astrology.
Very accurate astrology. So the
Yes.
biggest thing I feel like there's a lot of noises that are coming out from over there, and there's nothing happening. And the other day, our home security system was triggered and the house was secured, and there was no one in our house.
Oh, that's fun.
Very fun.
We love that.
So it wasn't my house, bitch. It was upstairs. So
Yikes.
anyways, so let's talk briefly about ascendant
Yeah.
in conjunction to like I know this is maybe more complicated, but your ascendant and with the purpose of your ascendant in conjunction to like your Mercury, how you
Um,
show up and like how you communicate. Is it
yeah.
really that
So,
important to go off of like that way you say ultimate alignment, right? So like let's say that your ascendant is in a really shy sign
mhm,
and you're in a job that and your Mercury also is in a shy sign when you're in a job that's forcing you to be more extroverted, how can
yep.
you know what I'm saying,
Yes.
utilize
Sorry.
that
Yes.
information to put yourself in a better position?
So what I will say about it's not really because sorry, I know you asked previously about the work stuff too. What I will say about your ascendant is it doesn't have a ton to do with work unless in your particular chart the planet that rules the ascendant or unless there's a lot of midheaven or 10th house influence on your ascendant. So when you're wanting to look at career, you don't want to necessarily look at the ascendant unless it's connected. Like say you're a Gemini rising and Mercury is your chart ruler because Mercury rules Gemini, right? Say
Mm-hmm.
that's in the 10th house, then that's something that you can like try to integrate because those energies are connected. But if they're not connected, if Mercury isn't connected to your ascendant, and your 10th house isn't connected to your ascendant, those are not necessarily things that you would like mesh together and integrate. What you could do is kind of separately look at your Mercury sign, say, and because it has a lot to do with communication.
Mm-hmm.
And say, yeah, you want to work on your communication just overall, but maybe to benefit you in the workplace. Start by reading into the sign that your Mercury is in, and learn not only the positive things, but the negative things as well. Um, and from there, you can kind of try to integrate that into everything in your life. Now, if it's connected to your 10th house, which is also called the midheaven, which is rules career,
Okay.
then I mean that's something that you would look at heavily, right? You would look at everything in your career through a tone of Mercury. So communication heavy, maybe you do writing, maybe you have like some maybe it's like a really fast moving energy and it's kind of like a multi-talented situation because that's very like Mercury-esque. Maybe it's very like language heavy.
Okay.
Again, these are all Mercury themes. So
Yes.
it's and I know you kind of also asked about the houses. Um, Again, I can kind of show you guys an example of what she's talking about. So this is what a birth chart looks like. And all these little segments of the pie are what we call houses. So these all not every single house is going to have a planet in it, but depending on where the planets were when you were born, all those little pie segments represent a sign. So that being said, you have your signs, you have your houses, and has um each house is responsible for certain themes in your life. So your first house is the ascendant, and that's responsible for kind of the way you look, um, the way you see things, the way the world sees you. And that's Libra, then you're going to look at all those things that I just described through the lens of Libra. And that's going to give you an idea of how you look to other people, how you come off, and the lens that you see the world in. Does that make sense? Did I
Yes.
explain that in a way
Yes.
that's okay?
Yes.
And then there's 12 houses. So every little piece of the pie is a different part of your life. So there's work,
Mm-hmm.
there's love, there's your home, there's like the shadow side of life, like there's darkness, there's like these more psychological houses, communication houses. So it's all very layered, and that's kind of where you start to an astrology book is helpful because it helps you kind of weave the whole picture together.
Right.
Yes.
Definitely.
So the 10th house is where you would look for career. Mercury is where you would look for communication, but you wouldn't necessarily cross those two over unless they're related in your specific chart.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay, so my Mercury is in Aries. So I
Yes.
just communicate aggressively for the rest of my life.
I mean, it's yeah. You know how an Aries communicates.
I mean, I don't know,
It's
man.
fun though. You can't take all the you gotta take the good and the bad, right? There's always a shadow side and a dark side, or a shadow side and a light side to every sign. So yeah, Aries can be like a little aggressive, but they can also be really fun and really childlike and really refreshing and like really motivated and motivating, right?
That's
So
true.
yeah, they always kind of have this like fresh energy about them, and they like don't really think before they speak, especially like a Mercury in Aries, because that's the way you communicate, right? So yeah,
Well
if you take
then,
that,
that's
go
like one
ahead.
of my big lessons that I'm learning this time around is, bitch, think before you speak anything because you can fuck around and find out.
And what house is that in for you then?
My Mercury, it's in the fourth
Yes.
house.
Okay, so then that's where like the houses come in. So like I just explained to her, you have your Mercury, which is communication. You
Yes.
have it in Aries, which is going to give you nuance to how you communicate. And then it's in the fourth house, which is going to tell you like even more about how that's going to impact your life. So like maybe you have had some like kind of tense conversations in your home because the fourth house rules the
My
area of
home.
home and comfort.
Yes.
Maybe you had like some of your comforts kind of like shaken up in your life, and like communication around that be like an area that's a little tumultuous.
Yes.
But because you have a night chart, and Mars isn't necessarily your worst planet, it's probably been constructive for you in some way as well. Like,
Okay, so what is Mars? What is the purpose of Mars? Your eyes are like,
well, no, because someone keeps texting me and I don't know how to stop. Can you hear the beeping on that side?
yeah, it's okay.
Okay, it's annoying and I need them to stop.
Booked and busy, as my niece says, booked and busy.
Seriously. No, but it's sorry, what were you so yeah, so Mars.
Mars.
So when you have the opposite malefic is what it's called. So Saturn and Mars are the malefics in day charts and night charts.
Why are they malefic?
Because they be malefic.
You're right.
They
We
be
do
causing
some
some
malicious
problems.
shit. Well, it's
They
probably for
cause some
karmatic
problems.
reasons. Like y'all did some fucked up shit. And now
Yeah, I
Aries
mean,
and Gemini gotta come in here and save the day.
we need we need a variation. I mean, it's all about range. So,
Because Virgo is also Mercury ruled too, right?
yep,
Listen,
we love a little Mercury. I'm a Gemini
malefic.
baby, so
Anyways,
I'm a big Mercury fan. Big
okay,
Gemini.
so they're malefic because they be causing problems.
Yep.
Continue.
So they can cause some issues, and depending on if you have a day chart or night chart, the opposite. So since the opposite malefic, so since Saturn is your worst malefic because you have a night chart, Mars will still be malefic in your chart, but it's more of like constructive, and it doesn't cause as many like sorrows. Like it's not going to be as difficult for you to deal with it, if that makes sense.
So communication essentially, because my Mars is in Gemini,
Yeah. Yep.
right?
And then again, yeah, so that's perfect. What you just did is then you like cross reference, you start to cross reference things because
At
you know,
work, it's because it's in the sixth house, bitch. See, look at I actually made this
see,
book.
you're getting it. Yeah,
I
because
made
then
this
you
book.
got to look at,
See,
heck yeah. Yeah,
I
perfect.
literally
Exactly.
did the damn thing. This thing is old. I actually made this before I left my ex, like years
Well,
before, and then this was like the literal jumping off point for me.
I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's I love, I mean, I've gifted many of those to like friends of mine in the past, kind of like made them a little
a little
outline of,
thing.
yeah, like an outline of what their chart looks like and what to, I would put like things to look up. Like that's a good thing to do too, is like write down, like even if you don't understand it right this second, or you know you want to look it up for yourself in the future, right? Like keep a part that's like things to look up in the future and just like jot notes down. That's a good thing to do too with astrology, just because it can be so complex.
So I'm looking at my chart, Uranus
Mhm.
and Neptune. I feel like I don't hear a lot about those planets.
Yeah, so those are two of the planets that are far away. Like I was saying, they're slower
Yep.
moving planets. Um, they also, depending on what like school of astrology you're following or maybe studying at the time, is they technically are like newer discovered planets, and they're not traditionally inputted as rulership of the signs. So like eventually Uranus came along and they made that the ruler of Aquarius, but traditionally it was Saturn. So it depends on like what astrologer you're talking to, first of all. But yeah, they can tend to be not overlooked, but they just don't cause as many. They're not a malefic, they're not a benefic. So they're just not as like
Important or interactive with your chart.
they are.
Important,
It's
but
just they're not as
interactive.
like, yeah, they just for some reason don't get as much of the stage. I can't tell you why, but I would say that it maybe has to do with what I said about the traditional astrology versus not. Um, because Uranus is a crazy planet. That planet will come in and just stir things up all over your life.
What do you
So,
mean? What is Uranus? I don't have a lot in this book about Uranus. So what is
I mean, it's a great. Hold on, I'm gonna silence this because this is. Can you edit this part out?
I mean maybe
I just don't want them to.
be disruptive?
Yeah, because they're like group texting me, and it's on my
Oh,
phone.
group texts are the worst.
There. Okay, goodness. I'm so sorry. Okay,
That's okay.
so
I'm still trying to
Uranus
find my 10th house, bitch. I'm still like
up at the
this.
top, the very top. It's also called
Okay.
the MC, the midheaven.
Mm, okay, I see.
I'm pretty sure it's in Taurus for you.
Listen, there's absolutely nothing in my 10th house. What does that mean? If you don't have something in a house, what does that mean?
That doesn't. So yeah, people kind of get worked up about that. You're not supposed to have a planet in every house. Some people do, but all it's kind of like everything else with astrology. When you're looking at a chart, you look at the sign on the cusp of the house. So if you have
Mm-hmm.
nothing on your 10th house and your 10th house is Taurus, then we look and we think about what rules Taurus, Venus.
Venus
So then we look at where our Venus is,
and
and then
Taurus.
that's, yep, and that'll give you context to your career. And that you just do that over and over and over with every single planet, every single house. And so that's where some of them really start to weave together and relate to each other. And you can see like, oh, well, when I'm like being really creative, my career really takes off, or maybe not. Like maybe if there's a lot of chaos going on in your personal life, then like your like relationships get messed up, or like if your routines are not aligned, then like your like friendships kind of go out
Get
of
messed
whack.
up.
Yeah,
Got it.
it all weaves together and connects. And then you start talking about the angles of the planets to each other. And that
Yep.
adds a whole another element of like, it basically will tell you whether or not the interaction that the planet is having with one another, if it's easy, if it's difficult, if it's strained. And those are called aspects. And that's like once you really start getting into things, then you
Yeah.
add that layer in.
The thing that you the time passages that you have me using
Mm-hmm.
is very good at explaining all
Yep.
the aspects and things like that. I did start getting into that a little bit.
Yep.
Um,
That will give you some crazy insights on like everything, your
so
personality.
if you have one, two, three, four, I have four. Okay, so I have, how do I want to word this question? I feel like people take their first, their big three, if you will, and run with that. When, for example, I only have two Aries placements, but I have four Capricorn placements.
Mm-hmm.
Is there like a you have more, so this rules out that, or does it work in tandem, or what would you say when it comes to looking at your chart holistically?
Um, it's very layered, but nothing cancels anything out necessarily. Um, there's a lot of rules about in traditional astrology about the sequence of the planets, like which planet comes before one another. And sometimes, or if a planet is, say, like the planets are in each other's signs, like say
Mm-hmm.
you have Gemini, you have Venus in Gemini, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
you look at the house that rules Venus. So you look at your Taurus, and then you see Mercury there, and Mercury rules Gemini. So you see how those two are very connected.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
called mutual reception, is what that's called. And
Okay.
depending on, so that makes those energies very very commingling. And depending on the planet, like if say it's like two negative planets, or not negative, two malefic planets,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that energy will cancel each other out, and it will make like the negative aspects of those planets less. Or like say you have
Got
a
it.
Mars and a Venus,
Yeah.
like it will make the negative planets or the negative aspects of Mars less, like diminish, but it will also diminish the positive aspects of Venus. And depending on if it's a day chart or a night chart, that will tell you how you're going to handle that personally in your life. If it's really going to affect you to have like your Mars energy brought down, or if it's just going to be more like of a productive energy.
Got
I
it.
don't, so
Yep.
there's
That
a
makes
lot of,
sense.
yeah, there's a lot of like rules like that. Like if, so canceling out kind of, what you were asking about specifically is called a stellium, which
Okay.
is a large concentration of energy essentially. And even though like, yeah, you're in Aries, but you have four planets in Capricorn, like, yes, your life is going to have a lot of Capricorn energy in it. And it also is going to have a lot of the energy of whatever house that's in. So that doesn't negate or cancel out the where your sun is. Like you're still going to have that energy in your life, but it depends on the whole chart, because if you're a Capricorn rising, you're going to look at the planet that rules Capricorn to kind of set the tone for your life, right? So if that happens to be co-present with three other planets, like you're going to have a lot of that energy in your life, and it's almost going to take on more of a Capricornian tone, yes, if that makes sense.
It does because I'm looking at where my Uranus and Neptune are placed,
Mm-hmm.
and it's in the first house, which is of self on my
Yes.
thing, right?
Yes.
How the fuck does someone show up like themselves as a Capricorn?
I mean,
But then, wait. But then also, I have my ascendant in my first house,
mm-hmm.
and my Neptune's in my first house, or my North Node. My North Node's in my first house. So I want to get back onto the little thing that I have. So with the North Node being in the first house, what does that do what is the purpose of a north node? I guess let's ask that
I'm
question
just looking
first.
at your chart here. So the North Node is a very karmic placement. It's a point in the sky that's measured from the moon. Um,
Okay.
and so you have the North Node and the South Node. So your North Node is a very it's basically the things that you need to focus on in your life, the characteristics and things that you need to work on to bring in like the best possible karma, the best possible version of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You need to integrate more of that energy into your life. The South Node is going to be, I kind of think of it as like, okay, my South Node's in Leo. Like I essentially spent my past lives mastering this Leo energy to the point where like if I overutilize it now, it can be detrimental because it's almost like it's an overuse of energy. It's an overdevelopment of ego.
Got
It's an
it.
overdevelopment of so you really and some people want to like think that it's like, oh, you want to ignore your south node and you only want to focus on your north node. But what you really want to do is think about balancing the two, bring in the strengths that you naturally have, but try to balance it with these other lessons that you have to learn from Capricorn. Um,
So is your south node going to be the in the opposing sign of Capricorn? So would it automatically
yep,
make it Cancer?
yep,
So, and Cancer rules over emotions and
the moon, yep.
the moon emotions.
The moon emotions and for you specifically it's going to really be about embodying that capricorn energy and like kind of bringing it into like your physical body because the first house is the house of self like you said so
Right.
so kind of like figuring out what that means for you is it would be the way to kind of embrace your full potential.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Venus is in my fifth house, but also my 10th house is in Taurus, is
Yep,
what you said.
yep.
So, what does Taurus rule over exactly? Like the traits of Taurus? Because I hear so many different things on the social medias about what Taurus does, Taurus this, Libra that, this, that, and all. Everyone has the same, like not same attributes, but same potential qualities. So, Taurus specifically, like, I guess in a better question, if you have the home sign and the home planet multiple times in your chart, are those areas that you should be heavily focused on when it comes to what you're here to accomplish in this lifetime. So, for example, when it comes to work, my Venus is in Taurus and my 10th house is in Taurus. So, Taurus qualities is what I should be focusing on essentially for work, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a loaded question because in your chart, yes, because Venus is your most positive planet. But somebody could have a lot of problems in their work area and have like say Saturn is they have a night chart, so Saturn is their most negative planet, and say they have Capricorn ruling their midheaven or their 10th house. And it's like maybe it's square Uranus, which causes like all these upsets and unpredictabilities, and then it's square Saturn, and those are two that's volatility and it's the most malefic planet, it's the most negative planet in your chart, so you don't necessarily want to focus on that. You kind of want, but it's good to be aware of those themes for you. Yes, absolutely. And that's because Venus is your most positive planet, so you want to
Mm-hmm.
focus on Taurus themes to improve your overall life, which would be Taurus themes are Venus ruled. So abundance, material, everything comfy, food, beauty. Yes, Taurus can be stubborn. They can be a little slow moving. They can be, well, they can be um, a little selfish. But those are things like all those themes of Taurus and the shadow side and the light side. If you can bring up some of the shadow side and focus more on like the luxurious parts of Taurus, like that's going to be good for you specifically in your chart. And that's why it's so specific, or that's why it's so important if you're getting into astrology to learn your chart, because just
Mm-hmm.
because you have Aries on your midheaven doesn't mean you want to start channeling all this Aries energy, especially if you have a day chart and Mars is square a bunch of things that are going to cause chaos. Like you maybe need to focus on Libra, which is its opposition, to bring like some more chill energy to not only your work life but like everything in your life.
Right.
um, so especially when you have what we call a stellium, like I was telling you earlier, if you have a concentration of a lot of planets in one sign,
Mm-hmm.
it can be kind of like an overload of energy in that area. But what it also does is if you've got 3 different planets, those all have their own energies too. So yes, they're all going to have a tone of whatever sign they're in, but at the same time, those those 3 planets are all connected to different signs, right? Because the planets rule the signs, meaning
Mm-hmm.
when something is happening in that sign that you have all those planets on, like maybe the moon's transiting that sign, it's causing things in all of these different areas of your life. So that's kind of what happens when you have charts that have like concentrated pockets of planets, which is
Mm-hmm.
like mine, as opposed to like a more spread out chart. You kind of, when you go through stuff, you kind of like go through it all at one time, and when, whether it's negative or positive, as opposed to like some of the ones that are more spread out, it's a little bit more like of a balanced sort of situation. But it can also be like really detrimental when it is bad because you don't have other energies to
Mm-hmm.
balance it out.
Yeah,
So,
my sister has a highly concentrated birth chart.
mhm.
Looking at hers, I'm like, dang, like
So do I.
you, it's very interesting to see. Can
Yeah.
you see, is it possible to see, like by looking at your chart this time, to potentially see what you experience in other lifetimes? Like, where would you look in your chart to see that? Is that where your South Node is?
Um,
Or is that not
there's
possible?
No, there is a way of doing it. I would have to mess with it though. There's a way to do it where, I mean, there's more than one way, but the method that comes to my mind that I've looked at before, or more than a couple times, is changing your birth chart so that your Saturn is your ascendant. So whatever sign your Saturn is in, you make that your ascendant, which takes some calculations and messing with on a program. But Saturn is very karmic. You don't really, you could do the South Node too. That would give like a more spiritual kind of undertone, probably. But usually Saturn is what I've looked at, because Saturn, again, it's very karmic, it's very heavy earth realm energy, whereas like South
Hmm.
Node is kind of um
More cosmical.
yeah, it's kind of woo-woo a little bit, depending. But yes, Saturn, if you read your chart from the perspective of Saturn being your ascendant, it gives you an entirely new chart. And that will tell you like what kind of karma, that's more like what kind of karma you have in this life, but it's like showing you what kind of karma you came in with.
Mm, see, that is some juicy tidbits right there
It's
because
very
my
interesting.
Saturn is in Aquarius.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So, and you can even kind of like, if you know charts, like I remember when I first like read that, I like did it a little bit in my head before I, like, just like the basics. Like I kind of just like twisted it in my head and I was like, oh, weird. So my descendant would be my ascendant, and you can kind of do it that way. But there's a way to do it on, I think astro.com has a way of doing it.
Okay, so oh my God, I had such a good question about that because I'm trying to remember. So you said Saturn essentially, or your ascendant. Would you leave, just put your ascendant as your Saturn and then leave your moon and your sun the same?
It recalculates everything. Yeah. So how does it do it? It kind of just, it moves everything to a different house, kind of. And I think,
Have you done it for
yeah,
yourself?
I think it keeps all the planets in the same house, but it moves the location of the house, if that makes
Got it.
sense.
Yep, it
You know
does.
what I mean?
Yeah, because
So
I
your 10th
noticed
house isn't your
that.
10th house anymore, but you'd have a different 10th house.
So that would be what I came into this lifetime karmatically having to
That'll
deal
be like
with.
your karma for this lifetime. Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting. I've looked at mine before too.
Okay, so what does that have to do? Is there any relation between doing that and then your Chiron planet?
Um, Chiron is an asteroid.
Yes, excuse me,
And
asteroid.
yes, and that is more having to do with like the wound, the mother wound specifically. It's very
Really? That's really what it is? That's super
it's
annoying
kind of an
because
ouchy, it's kind of an ouchy point in the
literally it has to do with my mom because it's in its mother sign then. Or I don't even know what the mother sign is, which is Cancer. Cancer is in
Cancer.
mother sign. Yeah. So I've got a mother
Yep,
wound and the mother wound. Like that
yep,
is, and it makes sense for
yeah,
my life because I've got a mother wound and a mother wound, like my
yes,
biological mother and my adopted mother. I'm like,
yes.
nigga, if this ain't some shit, I don't even know what. Okay.
Yeah, sometimes astrology is very literal and it's really funny like when it is. Like sometimes I just have to like laugh sometimes because I'm like, you couldn't be more creative.
Literally, like, and as I like look at my chart now and like getting some information, I'm like, you gotta be shitting me. Like, you
Yeah,
can't even make this shit up.
it's they call it the wounded healer. So, but it has a lot to do with the mother. Um, and it's a very touchy spot. Everybody in life comes from a woman, right? So even when people have like um severe trauma with their fathers, like that's obviously totally and completely valid, but everybody comes from a woman. And so everybody has some sort of trauma, some sort of like a little bit of a wound or a space for healing when it comes to their mother. It's just, that just is what it is. And it's a very powerful point because it can tell you a ton about like what you need to do in order to heal a lot of like the wounds in your life and the wounds that maybe affect you that are more subconscious because they're not always um like I can't like I have a cancer Chiron and like I previously and I'm still working on it have had like a wound with nurturing because it's the mother and yeah wherever it is will kind of show you what you can do or the themes that maybe you have surrounding like maybe a relationship with your mother or not and it doesn't have to be your mom. It can be like significant women in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's what Chiron is, and it can be kind of a tough one, especially when you have like Chiron transits going on with like Saturn. Like that's a tough transit for sure. So
Okay, so is
and
that
it's
why
long.
Cancer season this year damn near took me out? Because Cancer season this year was really,
Tough.
yeah,
Yeah, there was a lot going on astrologically. So that's fair. I would say.
interesting. So that has
There was a
nothing
lot
to
of big
do.
shifts that happened in July.
That's true, there was.
Yeah.
So that has nothing to do with whatever the fuck we were just talking about before I brought in.
South Node and the karma.
Yes, yes.
No, it's Chiron's not. I mean, when
I
you
mean,
talk about,
everything is like works in
yeah,
perpetuity with the other, right? But
right, yes, especially when you talk about like some of those deeper, like more psychological planets and more psychological houses, like Pluto, Saturn. Chiron is technically not a planet, but it's in there. Mars, not as much Mars, but Neptune. Neptune can be very karmic too. It's a slow moving planet. Um, and and Uranus to a point. But anytime you talk about any of those houses and the signs that rule them, or not houses, sorry, any of those planets and the signs that rule them, and then the houses that rule them, you're kind of getting into like, yeah, maybe some karmic stuff, definitely psychological things that are more on like the underbelly of life, right? You have because you have your Jupiters which, and your Venus, which is more fun, and your Mercury, which is more just about communication. But we all there's always another side to everything in life, and those are the planets that kind of signify that.
mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, a little bit it has to do with karma, I guess, because I mean you came into this life with your mother and you probably have had past relationships with them. So, I mean, you can definitely like layer in some of that nuance as you're like looking at how those different planets connect with Chiron, and kind of looking at how to heal those things. But yeah, I say with Chiron, it's best to just like start in the sign that it's in, learn more about the sign, and learn how maybe it could connect to some things that maybe you could work on, and that would make you feel like a little bit more whole.
Mm. So it's like
Mhm.
filling in Swiss cheese.
Yeah, I mean, self-awareness is a huge part of everything, right? So just like being aware that you have that, and then as you can kind of see it start to play out in your life more because you're aware of it, you can address it. And I mean, astrology, I always say like learn the astrology, figure out what's going on maybe for the month, learn your chart, and then kind of like forget about it a little bit. Like, and then come
Right.
back to it and forget about it. Like you don't want to live your life through this like looking glass of
Mm-hmm.
organizing everything into a categorized space, right?
Right. You
That's not
go
what we're here to
insane.
do. Right.
No.
It's not what we're here to do. I mean, it would be like going to the psychologist for every itch that you have. Um, and
Right.
I love about astrology is it giving nuance to and kind of some meaning and some actual words to some of the really complicated and complex human experiences that we have, and actually like putting words to it and being able to organize it in a way that can be understandable and give us some awareness. But at the same time, you have to live your life. So it's a tool. It is not a crutch, and it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely not a reason to be like, oh well, I'm a Scorpio, so I can be kind of a bitch.
Right.
Sorry, it's not for that. It's to give context and to maybe allow for some objectivity and to go into your life with a little bit more of a fuller picture of who you are and who other people are and more understanding. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think like I said, a lot of times it's you learn it and then you forget it and you come back to it and you kind of just go through the
To
waves of
maneuver
life.
that way. Yeah.
Yep.
That's what I've had to do too because I have a tendency to live in the clouds because it's a
Yep.
more comfortable space for me to continue just to be with the planets and stuff. Like that's what a lot
Yep.
of my art consists of is me being with the planets. So I've had to learn to step away and ground myself and be in the now because I'll get overwhelmed and in this really weird, fucked up, dark place about all of
You'll
the
spin.
stuff, you know?
Your head will spin if you if
Definitely.
you if you learn a little something that gives you some really valuable insight, and then maybe step away from it for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
um don't you can't, because you'll start to look at people in a different way too, and not negatively necessarily, but like you want to still see them as people. You don't want to
Right.
see them as a physical manifestation of a planet or a transit happening in your life. Now, like it
Right.
can help with how to deal with certain things. And for me, timing has been really valuable because I know, like, I just went through like a hellish like 5 years
Right.
uh, via my like when you would look at the astrology of it. And for me, it was kind of, it was like a light at the end of the tunnel when and kind of like it's like, I know that I'm supposed to be learning something from this. So what can I learn from it? And this is, I have an end date. I have
Mm-hmm.
a date where I know like it's going to be, I'll find some relief and I'll have learned things that I wouldn't have learned if I wouldn't have gone through these things. And that can be a really big help too, just with overall like day-to-day life, like just morale and
Mm-hmm.
your quality of life. And I mean, it's everything is temporary, and this too shall pass, and astrology is a good tool to keep that in mind.
Right. Well, with that being said, do you have a site for people booking? Are you just doing email situations with Booksy? Where can people book with
Yes,
you?
I mean, my website is, it's being converted into a portfolio right now. But you can always find me on Instagram. I do a lot of communication on there. um, at Rachy Does It is my Instagram handle. RACHY Does It. um, and yeah, we can just chat on there and find a time. I can kind of figure out what you're looking for and we'll make it work.
Lovely. So just Instagram, you're not on like TikTok or Discord or anything like
Oh,
that.
I am on TikTok, same handle.
Got it.
Um, and you can find me there. I talk a lot, probably my most well, actually, Twitter is probably where I talk the most astrology, to be honest. And my
Mm.
handle on Twitter is Rach RACH underscore ELLL 3 L's. Um, I talk a lot about about astrology on Twitter because there's a really active and informed Twitter community. But I talk about astrology on all of my social media platforms. It's my main thing, I would say. So you can get a hold of me on any of them, really.
Okay, so what are you gonna be doing next? What's new? You're booked and busy. You're a super busy person. When's the
Uh,
next fashion show? How's the
yeah,
company? What's up?
yeah. Company is good. Like I said, I'm building my website right now to kind of reflect some of the past projects I've done and be more like creative director oriented. It's probably not going to have a ton of astrology on there. I need to kind of figure out like a separate thing for that. But I am writing readings monthly for, I'm doing like corporate astrology now, which is kind of cool.
I love that for you.
Yes, that's really cool. I definitely offer that. I am creative directing a fashion show for a clothing and art nonprofit, and that's going to be out of Minnesota, and that'll be in October.
Dope.
Um, and then we're actually going to LA Fashion Week with that same company in October. Or sorry, the fashion show's in November. I'm going to LA Fashion Week, which is really cool. In October. Yeah, so that's really
That
exciting.
so October is the month for the things and the stuff.
It's gonna be a lot, yeah. And then we'll probably have another fashion show, like our showcase with Icon in January. So
Dope.
there's a lot on the books right now, but it's
Booked
good to
and
be
busy.
busy. Yes. Of
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for carving time out. I appreciate this.
course, yeah.
Hopefully, the
It's
people
always
learn
fun.
some things and some stuff. Now I know what I can go back into in my own chart, just learn again.
Learn all the things.
Right. It
I'm
is,
always learning about my chart. I've never stopped for 12 years,
it's
so
a lot. It
it is.
truly is a lot, especially since my ascendant sign changed. Like that was a rug that was pulled out from underneath of me. And I'm
That's a
still
game
like,
changer.
right, but I'm still trying to process how much of a game changer that really is.
Well, you heard me talking about the ruling planet of the ascendant. So
Yeah.
it's when you told me that, I was like, excuse me. I was like, this is what my nightmares are made of.
Well,
So
yeah,
that's
this
okay. We're always learning.
yeah.
It was meant to be that way for some reason. So
Well, the funny thing is that there's some things that you said in this episode tonight where I'm like, damn, that definitely is a lesson for me because a lot of the things that I have been avoiding that I just don't want to do are very apparent in my chart that I should be doing them. And so I'm like, bitch, if you don't just get it together already and just go do those things, then I don't
well,
know
the
what.
universe sent me for you. Sorry. I have a
Right.
tendency
Just
to
a
do
quick
that.
little boo bopping, just to get you make sure you're on path. Like, here you go. So, well, thank you so
Have a
much,
good,
Rachel. I appreciate it.
of course, it's
I'll let
always
you know
fun.
when the episode drops.
Heck yeah.
Okay, have a good night.
Bye, girlfriend.
Bye.